Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Digital Service Squad webinar that we've got for you today. We are talking about Intro to Google Shopping. So Kit Redding from our team is here. Welcome, Kit. And he's going to walk us through everything you need to know about getting started with this powerful tool to add on, hopefully, to your e-commerce platform. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. I'm excited about that. Just a quick note about this webinar brought to you by the Digital Service Squad of South Georgian Bay, which, as you may know, is managed here by the Small Business Enterprise Center, the South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center. We've had a lot of amazing support from additional partners like the County of Simcoe, the Town of Collingwood, and the Town of the Blue Mountains to help keep this program going uninterrupted over the course of the last couple of years, which has been an amazing experience and really great to be able to offer so many services to businesses in need. And one last note about the Digital Service Squad as well. I wanted to mention that if you've been following along, today is December 1st as we film this, which means that the grant deadline has been, we're beyond that. We've just passed the grant deadline. So if you're interested in connecting with your Digital Service Squad, we are still around until February of 2022. Doing something like setting up your Google Shop is a great example of some of the digital service and support that we can provide. So if you have any questions, feel free to book a consult with one of our team members. The links for that will be at the end of this webinar. So feel free to do that. And at this point, I'm going to hand off to Kit to take us through today's webinar of Google Shopping.
Thanks, Ben. We'll just jump right into it. Start off by, what is Google Shopping? If you're not familiar with it, this is where we jump into being very sort of back to the introduction and just giving a bit of an overview in case you're not sure what it is. I suspect a lot of you have interacted with Google Shopping and you may or may not have realized that it actually was Google Shopping that you were looking at or checking out certain products and doing research on. So Google Shopping is a product discovery experience for users. And as we are on Google searching for random things about dancing pets and dogs and those sorts of things, you'll always notice that there's usually products that are associated to your shop at the top, where when you're searching for dogs, you might see dog collars, dog vests, all sorts of great puffy coats for dogs and things like that. And that's where Google Shopping comes in. They take a look at what you're searching for, and they present to you products that they feel as though are relevant to your search. So the idea is to make it easy for users to research their purchases based on what they're looking for, or maybe you didn't even know you were looking for, and find information about different products that are out there tied and that are relevant to your searches. Within the thumbnails that Google presents to you at the top of your search page, you'll notice that there's product features and prices. And what Google does well is that they connect with sellers to make their purchases. And what that does is it's sort of very similar to a marketplace in the sense that we're all very familiar with Amazon. Google's sort of looking at something similar to that and leveraging their technology within the search engine space. How does Google Shopping work? Google Shopping enables users to view product information from the sellers that is updated on a regular basis by the sellers. Online retailers can submit feeds containing product information to Google, and feeds are what contain all your products. So if you're a seller, you would take your products that you sell, create what Google calls a feed, which can be anything from a spreadsheet to a connection to your e-com to some automation that you can automatically check your feed, and Google will pick it up based on other changes you've made in your system, whether or not it's in your POS, retail, or what have you. The product information comes directly from the seller. So you as the seller are the ones that are sending the product information to Google and to the Google Shop. And that's where people are able to take a look at the products you're selling and eventually make a transaction with you. It allows you to show the current prices. If you have any latest offers or discounts that you've got, you can push them out there, distressed inventory, what have you. And the current product availability. And that's obviously a key piece. You don't want to be trying to sell items that are not in stock. When using Google Shopping, you're browsing products from advertisers and sellers. So as someone that would push your products to Google Shop, you can actually advertise those products as well. So there is a paid model that Google Shopping does implement, which I will talk a bit more as we get into the Merchant Center, which is the dashboard that you would use to manage a lot of your products that you are syncing and syndicating with the Google Shopping atmosphere. Items are ranked by Google Shopping in terms of search relevance. So when you're searching in Google, like we talked about before, if you're looking for something around dancing dogs, you might find products that are tied to dancing dogs. And with that, you'll see that across the top of your search page. You can also take a deeper look and filter further based on the products that you're looking at. If you take a look across the top, you will see all results. You'll see images that you can search specific to your search term, as well as a shopping area. So you can look into there, and that will give you far more products, far more filtering, price, all sorts of variants that you can query and search by to narrow down what you're looking at and potentially find something that you're interested in purchasing. Items are ranked by Google Shopping in terms of search relevance. So as we talked a bit about, as you're searching specific terms, Google will take a look at what those terms are that you're searching and do its best to connect relevant products to what you're searching. And based on the technology and their algorithms, they actually do a pretty darn good job at doing that. Items that are sponsored indicate that. So they do have a label on top of them to let you know that that particular advertiser is paying to promote that particular product. And this is referred to as PPC, which is pay-per-click. Although Google does have a couple different models they use, which we'll get into shortly.
Hey, Kit, quick question. So Patty had asked in the Q&A here, does it work with experiences? So like, brewery tours or like an event kind of thing instead, rather than a physical product, was the question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and something that we probably have to dive a bit deeper into the policies that Google has. And I do jump into this a little bit later on with regards to what Google will allow and don't allow. I don't have that specific list in front of me here, but to my knowledge, it is specific to actual physical products that you sell, and it's doesn't qualify for experiences and things like that. But that would be something that would be worth looking a bit further into as it relates to what you're selling in your particular store.
Well, yeah, and I think you can, because I just did a quick search in Google Shop, in that environment. They're not very there, so there's not a lot of experiences. Like I did a brewery tour search. And they're pretty rare. So, I mean, I think there's certainly a focus more on those physical products. But there is a bit of a sprinkling I've found of like, there's one like a virtual craft beer tour.
Okay.
Kind of interesting.
Most of my experience has been sort of on the physical products and bricks and mortar retail. So that's an interesting one. And you'll know pretty quickly when you connect your store, whether or not you're manually adding a feed or you are connecting your Shopify or some other e-com that you have. Google will give you some pretty solid feedback pretty quickly if what you're trying to sell doesn't meet their particular policy or requirements. And there are a number of data points that do need to be fulfilled in order to qualify for Google. I know one thing that's very difficult when it comes to setting Google up is if you are selling used products, because typically you don't have SKUs or unique IDs, or variants tied to, like, if you're selling a t-shirt, a small, medium, and large, things like that. So, there's some difficulties around that when it comes to selling. If you want to sell alcohol, for example, or say you were opening up a cannabis shop, those are other examples of what's perceived as our banned products, and Google won't, or isn't at the point now that they are willing to sell those types of products. Will that come in the future? A lot of things have changed over COVID. No one would ever thought you could have walked into a restaurant and buy beer and take it home with you. So, things are changing in the landscape and based on demand, and a lot of it comes around to sort of risk and what these certain services are willing to risk, and make sure they've got the policies in place for things like that. So brewery tours is definitely an interesting one, and I would say happy to follow up with the specific link to the Google Shopping policies and requirements, and there is a detailed link there. Or Ben, if you want to put that up in the chat notes, maybe. I think if you just search it, it should come up pretty quickly. Otherwise, we can follow up with it for sure. But yeah, there are definitely some restrictions within what you can sell on in Google Shopping, but Google's pretty good to work with you on that. Well, any other questions that came up in the chat, Ben, or should I just keep on keeping on?
Yeah, no, that was just the one. Keep on going. Yeah, thanks so much.
Perfect. Google Shopping has a very detailed policy and requirements. So that was one thing I did have here. And it's definitely something that you need to take a look at, and everyone's so different with what you're selling. So take a look and see if you do qualify. If you do, then it's something that's worth taking further. When there's a compliance issue, like I mentioned, they will connect with you and try and work you through it. And it may not seem like a very inviting message you receive, because usually it's along the lines of your account has been banned or suspended, or it's no longer valid, things like that. So it's not the most friendly message that they do send you back, but usually there is a link to take a look at the specific issue that is occurring. And if it's not super specific, typically you're looking at that requirements sheet and what is and isn't allowed, and what data points Google does require in order for you to sync with their service. So take a look at that, and that will definitely hopefully shed some light on the issue you might be having. There also can be certain delays with the system. So if you are syncing products to Google Shop, sometimes they aren't, it isn't real time. So if you make an update, or you perhaps put something on sale, and then you go check in Google Shopping and hit refresh and hit refresh and hit refresh, it may not be updated right away. So there is a slight delay between when you sync updates and when Google actually picks those up. They're not really clear as to how long that is. Usually it's pretty quick, but just be aware that can be something that can happen. So don't worry, don't hit the panic button too quickly, but obviously make sure you check within a few hours to ensure the product has been updated if it's something that's it's critical that needs to be changed. Google does include reviews to assist in purchase decisions. So I think everyone's likely aware of Google reviews as it relates to Google My Business. I know Ben and the team at the DSS squad, definitely it's the first thing that we talk about as relates to making sure that you've got a solid digital footprint, is your Google My Business is set up. Well, in the shopping space, it's the same sort of engine tool that's used there for potential users to be able to rate and make comments on your products. Google doesn't give you the ability to delete a review yourself. If you deem the review itself is inappropriate, then you can submit a ticket to them. And if Google does deem it's inappropriate, slander or what have you, then they will take that down. Typically, your best play within Google is to try to spin any review in your favor, and just be smart about how you are responding to certain customers. And there's a ton of YouTube videos and white papers and such out there on how to be clever when it comes to responding to reviews. And typically it's not much different than if someone posts something on your Facebook page that is a complaint of some sort. So it's just a matter of sort of turning the story around and making sure you correct the facts if the facts aren't right, and doing your best to recover that customer in that space. When it comes to what you're setting up with Google, you do have to have your shipping policies in place, and that can vary based on destination. And typically that's on the seller, or you, to be able to make sure you've got that pricing in place and that everything's in check there. And when you are setting your store up, that is a requirement for you to ensure that you have your shipping in place and everything's good there. And your sellers are also required to have terms and conditions, although most e-com shops, I know Shopify for sure, does require you to have that set up. And if you don't, I'm pretty sure you're not able to enable your store, but always make sure you've got your terms and conditions in place, your shipping policies in place and rules. And most e-com systems that small businesses are running, whether they're using Shopify or another service, I know Shopify does actually have negotiated rates for their customers, which are I think they start around sort of 20 or 30% off the top, which saves you having to call your courier and try to negotiate yourself. So usually there's some pretty good discounts in that space, especially if you're using Shopify. But Google Shopping does require you to have that set up and connected and make sure those rules are in place. So make sure you got it in there. And I'm sure if most of you are selling online, you likely do.
And just on that note too, I dropped the link for the Google Merchant Help Center. It'll take you right to their shopping ads policies, and so what's prohibited and what's not, and then and it brings you right into that environment too. So there's lots of help and information there.
Great, thanks, Ben. Appreciate that. Google Shopping does behave very similarly to I'd refer to Amazon. And if you're not familiar with that space or you're not selling there, those are referred to as marketplaces. And as you're syndicating your products, ultimately Google is really just a vehicle to get your products out there. If there happen to be any sort of customer service issues or any sort of follow-up, warranty, wrong size, refunds, those sorts of things, that is on the seller to be able to connect with the purchaser and work with them to ensure that they get the product they want, or if there was an issue with the product they received, that the customer service is dialed in and responsive in that space. So it is something that you do need to be aware of. The Google Shopping isn't necessarily a set it and forget it. So it is something that you do need to fold into your overarching business procedures and make sure you've got a standard operating procedure for that customer service, and I suspect most of you likely do. And Google Shopping wouldn't change in any way where you would just fold that particular purchaser into your normal routine and treat them as they were just a regular customer. So, but be aware that this is on you to make sure that you are able to fulfill on that, where Google does not offer customer service in this space. As I mentioned earlier, all of the shopping items and products that you do see, you'll notice that as they display, they include their price and taxes and that sort of thing. So all that is obviously a requirement when you are setting up your sync and your feed with Google Shopping. And as I mentioned earlier, shipping costs can vary, and we talked about the customer service side of things as well. So getting a bit ahead of myself here, but those are all just very key items as you're working through your setup to make sure that that everything's all the boxes are checked off. I'm going to talk now about what the Merchant Center is and how it relates to Google Shopping. Google Shopping is actually the customer interface, and that's where how they interact with it, and that's how Google promotes it out there as Google Shopping. The seller dashboard is referred to as the Google Merchant Center, and it's what powers all of your Google Shopping products and is the interface that you can log into and manage everything. How much does it cost to sell products in the merchant center? There's a couple different models that they use. You only pay if you run Google Shopping ads, and the cost depends on the payment model that you select when you get things set up within your Google Merchant Center. A lot of times, if you're just syncing products from your ecom, whether it's Shopify, WooCommerce, whatever it is you're running, there isn't any cost to sync, and your products will show up in Google Shopping. If you decide that you do want to run some promotional products within the Google Shopping space, then this can be done within the Google Merchant Center. The two models that the Google Merchant Center does embrace is a cost per click model, and very similar pay-per-click, PPC, there's all different terms for it. With this payment type model, you pay for every time someone clicks on your ad, which is pretty self-explanatory in this space. There is a cost per engagement model, and it essentially charges you when someone expands or collapses an ad and engages with it for more than 10 seconds, as well as scrolls or taps on the ad. So there's a few different factors that would play into whether or not you get charged within the cost per engagement model. And really it comes up to whatever you see to be more relevant for your particular business and the products that you're selling. I'm sure the question people are thinking right now, if no one's been so bold as to drop it into the chat, is how do I get started? So I'm going to walk you through the actual manual process of setting up your Google Merchant account. Since there are so many different e-commerce tools and POS systems out there, there are just so many variables around that we'll touch on that in a little bit, but I thought I would walk everyone through the actual setup of the Google Merchant Center, which is the dashboard that everyone on this call is likely going to be most concerned with and interacting with on a regular basis, or likely the reason why they're even on this webinar. So initially, you'll need to log into Google Merchant Center, and you can just Google Merchant Center, and it will come up in your results. You can, if you don't have a Google account, which I suspect if you've got a Google My Business listing already, which I hope most of you do, then you would already have a Google account tied to that Google My Business. So I would make sure that you use that just so you're able to centralize everything and you don't have a number of different Google accounts set up, because that can make things really difficult for small businesses to track. And I see Ben nodding his head. You know, how many times do you connect with a small business, Ben, where you're taking 5 different Google accounts and trying to consolidate into one?
Thankfully, not that often. Yeah.
Oh, no?
The consolidation, like the singular account. I mean, yes, a lot of business owners have a lot of different accounts, but oftentimes they use one as their main. So kudos to them.
I know a lot of clients I deal with in my my consulting business, and I'm trying to get them set up on all their Google. I find that I tend to get a list of about 4 or 5 accounts that may or may not be connected to their Google services. So I would always suggest keeping a main account and centralizing it, and your workspace account, your Google Workspace, and those that know, and those that don't, it's you probably just have a normal Gmail account, but your Google Workspace account is considered a Gmail account and can be used for the login for your Google Merchant Center as well as your other services. So keep that in mind. Once you're at the Google Merchant Center website, you can click the Get Started to set up your merchant profile. When you get things going, you'll need to first set up your business information, and then you'll need to enter information like your company's country name and website URL. Additionally, you'll add contact details like your name and email address too. Next, you'll need to upload your products. This is the real heart and core of Google Merchant Center and really what makes things work. To run Google Shopping ads and local inventory ads, you'll need to update upload your products first. So if you get in there and you've got a bunch of products in mind that you want to advertise for, you'll need to make sure you've got all your inventory within the Google Merchant Center before you can start to advertise those particular products. So just need to make sure that the cart stays behind the horse on this one. To upload products, you'll need to create a feed within the Google Merchant Center. This feed is a data source that Google uses to create your ads eventually down the road. And really, we talk about whether or not this is a free or paid service. This is a free service. However, how Google does monetize it is through their advertising. So there's definitely a heavy push for you to pay to advertise your products, but it is worth noting to you that there is no requirement to do so. And so if you do have a bunch of products you'd like to sync with the Google Shopping, then you can do so and there is no charge to you. When you log into your account, you go to the products category and click on feeds. When you click the plus sign, that will initiate a dialog box for you to upload either a text file or a CSV file, or you can actually manually enter the data within the Google Merchant Center. If it's something that you're just looking to test the waters on, then you could always try adding a couple products. It's not a bad idea just to see how its setup is and how it works. If you are looking to add a number of different products, then I would always suggest creating some sort of spreadsheet or CSV file and use that when it comes to uploading to the Merchant Center. Once you've got all your products in there, then you can submit your feed. You can upload your entire inventory to your feed, and Google enables you to upload your data from various sources, as I mentioned. You can actually create schedules. If you've got a feed or your list that you're updating on a regular basis, you can connect that with your Google Merchant Center. And there's a bunch of different ways you can connect. You can even connect your Ecom directly and sync through there. And that's going to be likely 90% of what people will do on this call. And I'm going to talk a bit about that in after this particular slide here. When you upload your products, you want to include important information for your product, like an ID, a title, description, link, image link, availability, price, category, brand name are the key things that you'll need to include. For some of the different types of products, like I spoke about earlier, if you are potentially a used store or an antique shop, there are some additional fields and data points that you will need to include that Google does require based on the nature of your business. One of those is condition. Majority of people that are going to connect their store or work within the Google Merchant Center are likely selling new products. But if you're not selling new products, you do need to make sure that you indicate that the item is used. If you do actually have a product that is used and for some reason when it was set up, it's natively defaulting to new, that is one of those classic cases where Google will come back to you and essentially say that your account is banned, on hold, suspended, however you may want to call it. And you'll need to go through and correct those data points. And for the most part, they're pretty good to point you in the right direction. And the nice thing about Google Shopping or the Google Merchant Center is that Google support is actually pretty good. You can get on with a live agent and work with them through certain issues to try and correct the issue. Because the advertising model tied to Google Shopping does generate a significant amount of revenue, Google is able to provide proper support for this service, unlike if you have a problem with your Gmail account, which is a free service. Typically, you're scrolling through pages and pages of support articles that likely do nothing but confuse you further. Once you get everything set up within the Google Merchant Center, you can showcase your products. And we talked about advertising throughout this, and I did indicate that you're not required to advertise, but ideally this is what this is created for, and this is what Google wants you to do. So you can start showcasing them. You can do shopping ads to local inventory ads. You can use the Merchant Center to help people discover your products and different things. So if you've got new products that you're looking to launch out there, then you can do that by paying to advertise within this space. So that is how you get things set up. I did talk about commerce systems and integration, and there are great hooks and APIs and connections with the majority of the major players within the e-commerce spaces. If you are on e-commerce, you're likely using one of these three. And actually, I don't know if Squarespace on here. They're pretty big too, but or Square as well. But these are sort of the main go-tos when it comes to retail and e-com. And when it comes to using these tools here, they definitely make the setup and integration with the Google Merchant Center very, very simple. I'm most familiar with the Shopify interface, and I was going to walk through how that is done a little bit here and give you some sense of what that integration is like and how easy it actually is. So when you have a Shopify e-com system, you can connect it through and sync products with the Google Merchant Center. When you do that, you go into channel management, and when you're and most of these are going to refer to it as channel management, and that's typically what these marketplaces like Merchant Center, like Amazon, like Walmart, they're all kind of going that way. You can connect to these various channels within your e-com platform. And when you are in Shopify, there is a Google interface there where you can select and add that channel in. When you get prompted, you will go through and need to log in and sync your Google account with your Shopify account. And based on that, you'll be able to define sort of which products you want and how you go about syncing those products and various things like that. And it definitely makes the process much simpler. Within Shopify, you can actually determine which products you want to sync, so you don't have to sync your entire inventory and that sort of thing. Now, there is a verification process that does go along with this, and similar to most of these tools that we've got here for running your e-com shops. There is you will need to go through that and verify your account and make sure that you are who you are and that you are a business that is able to sell these products here and that sort of thing. So that's how that setup goes, and it does make it pretty simple so that you can centralize what you're doing. And typically, I probably say 90% of the people out there that are selling in the e-com space, they are going to likely get this set up through their e-com channel and not have to worry about linking or logging into the Google Merchant Center, unless, of course, you want to start running some ads based on those products. But the beautiful thing about services like Shopify is they actually integrate there as well. So essentially, once you get your Google channel set up, you can actually go into the marketing tab within your Shopify account and do some paid promotion around your products there too, which is great. So that's typically how most would connect with Google Merchant Center and other marketplaces, and definitely the way that I would recommend you go through when it comes to syncing your products to the Merchant Center and making them available within Google Shopping would be to essentially use your Ecom tool to be able to sync that through and set that up. One of the great things is that, as Ben mentioned earlier, as part of the Digital Service Squad, if this sounds a bit complicated or you don't have a lot of time to be able to invest in here, then by all means, we can connect with you and book a session, and we can kind of walk you through this. Something like this might, I'd suggest probably an hour session or at least a couple of half-hour sessions. And it's always helpful as well when you do make that request to include as much information as you can. It is a pretty specialty type process, and just want to make sure we probably get you connected with the right particular squad member that can dance you through this with ease. I'm going to bump over to some questions here and kind of have a bit of an open dialogue round table around the Merchant Center. Ben, have you is there anything that's kind of come up in the feed along the way? I'd encourage people to throw some questions out there. It's a bit of a comes across as a bit of a technical process, but you know, if you do have some questions, by all means, please put them out there, because I did want to save a lot of time at the end of this webinar to sort of have an open dialogue around this this particular topic.
Yeah, thanks, Kit. So I haven't seen any other questions pop up yet. But yeah, I mean, one thing that came to mind for me was well, I mean, it's just more of a comment. I mean, like, I like the fact that there's not so much upkeep required, that it can be a very automatic process for the business owners, because I think that's a major hurdle for a lot of businesses, where, like, if it's another thing we have to manage on the day-to-day, forget about it. So
yeah, and that's why I wanted to sort of spend a little bit of time around that that Shopify integration, and I refer to Shopify because I know that space best. But yeah, like I said, 90% of the people or businesses are definitely going to go into their ecom platform and basically use the channel management that's built into it to be able to set up their feed, sync it seamlessly, and determine what inventory they want, what inventory they don't want. You can even specify, you know, how much of that particular inventory you want to share with the Google Merchant Center. The other great thing that most of these e-com systems have built into them is there is some coaching around, you know, being able to actually edit the data points within Google Merchant Center. So since some of the data points aren't native to services or tools like Shopify, you can go in there and indicate, you know, if there is a gender you want to specify for your particular product. Again, I talked a bit about new and used. There's an opportunity there, and this all can be edited typically right within your commerce system. So there's not really that need to be able to bounce back and forth a lot with regards to what's being what data you've got set up with your Google Merchant Center. If you happen to get some feedback from Google that there's some data that's missing with your sync, and typically that's the majority of what comes back is when you are syncing. There are some default values that would be set within Shopify and other tools like that. And when you do set up channel management, if technically you don't go in and sort of look at everything in gross detail, something like that could come up. So you know, don't be alarmed if you get some feedback from Google that you don't you haven't met all the requirements. It might just be that, like I said, I know Google defaults to every item being new, and when you initially set up your shop within or set up Shopify with Google Merchant Center and just sync it without looking at the detail in detail, sometimes you may be syncing some points. And what's interesting as well is it's quite amazing how smart Google is, in the sense that if you happen to have a product that say potentially you've got at price A on your e-com store, and you've set up your merchant center manually and have a different price for that product, what's amazing is the Google bot will actually crawl your various pages, and it can interpret your price and realize that what you're selling it for on your e-com is different than what you have it for sale on the Google Merchant Center. And it will essentially delist that product until you have that price parity in place. And so it's things like that it's you know, it's a very technical tool and service that they have, and that's another important piece to the Google Merchant Center, is to ensure that all of your pricing that you do have on your e-com or within your POS system is essentially is all the same. Now, some of you may not have e-com, and we didn't touch a lot on that here in this presentation. But if you have a POS system, I know Lightspeed's quite popular in that space, and I know that their e-com isn't super advanced. Then if you've got a great Lightspeed set up for your POS and you're looking to use Google Merchant Center, or you're trying to get some of your products online, then you can connect Google Merchant Center with your Lightspeed POS, sync products out there. And then if you don't want to proceed with the Lightspeed Ecom themes and setup that they have there is a service from Google called Pointy, which you can actually use that as an ecom interface and be able to sell online. And essentially Pointy just syncs with your Google Merchant Center to be able to offer those products and allow people to purchase online. I guess the question for the group that we've got here, I'd be curious to have a bit of understanding of kind of who actually has an ecom set up, what systems are you using, and maybe there's some specific questions we can kind of address based on current setups and things like that. Is Shopify the go-to out there, or WooCommerce, or what's the group using? Drop it in the chat if you can. Ben, what are you seeing on most of your consulting spaces when it comes to connecting with people that are running different ecom tools and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm always surprised. Like we see a lot of Wix usage across the board. But Margaret and Ria just dropped in the chat. Shopify is their platform. So. Yeah, I imagine Wix has a lot of the same functionality too. But I mean, even with Wix, like I know connecting a Facebook shop is definitely a little bit more involved than Shopify. It's not quite as smooth. Still doable, but yeah, a few more hoops to jump through.
Well, I think Wix got purchased or acquired or something with Square.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of the popularity is coming from. I know I've seen a lot of the ecom sites, and they're using the Wix engine as the builder. So I think there was something that went on between those two, and they're working together now.
Right. Yeah. So it seems like most of the people joining us today are using Shopify, probably.
And based on the couple that did reply there, do they have channel management set up? Are they connecting to other marketplaces or services, or syncing with Amazon? Curious sort of how advanced some of the people on the call here are sort of pushing their systems as well.
Oh, Ria says, I will connect to Google now. That's great. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, no, it's a good setup. And then it also, I'm not sure if Ria is using the marketing tools within Shopify as well. They do make it very simple. And what I do find that's great about Shopify is that they're able to really put together some good wrap-up reports as it relates to the products you've got, how people are engaging with those products within the Google Merchant Center, and within Shopify, and this report might be a more advanced report depending upon the plan you've got with Shopify, but they've got some they've got some advanced reporting around certain products that are getting a lot of activity but maybe aren't converting for a sale, and so usually what Shopify's AI engine does is they say, well, there's a lot of interest here, maybe the price point's not right, or that sort of thing. So a lot of that insight can really be helpful. And when you are connecting to other marketplaces, you've definitely got more people and more eyeballs on your products. And because of that, you get a lot more data back based on how people are engaging with your products and what's selling, what's not, why it's not selling, so it's always something that's good to keep an eye on, because you might have a product that is getting a lot of interest, but there's just no conversion to sale. And usually what that means is there could be a few factors, but usually it means that maybe it's not priced quite right.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's great. And if you want to bring up the last slide there too, so we can
do a bit of a run through.
Yeah, just as a usual wrap up to mention that, yeah, our digital service squad is still available once again to help with these kinds of support issues or questions. And we have a booking calendar available that you can connect with us at any time for very specific support, just like this. Yeah, thanks, Kit, for that very informative webinar. Really appreciate it. I'm excited to explore this more with some of our clients, hopefully, and get them connected to Google Shop.
Thank you. Thank you.
And thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye for now.